Hey, Andre, we've just got some instant Instagram interesting, is that a lot of news?
Yes.
Because we've got the first tow, as far as we know, of a Rivian pickup truck across country, and you scouted it out. So in this video, we are going to tell the story, and we're going to discuss what it's like to tow with a Rivian pickup truck, even though we haven't done it, but because of the very meticulous nature of this Instagram account,
Yes.
Gideon the Rivian,
Yes.
we can actually tell you what it's like to tow across country, or at least Gideon the Rivian can with a Rivian. So tell me, Andre, who is Gideon the Rivian?
So this is an Instagram account, and it appeared at first it was a couple.
Yes.
So a husband and wife. And I didn't know much about it, so I started digging. Their trip was documented really, like you said, meticulously, with lots of different images and information. So I kept going and looking through it, and I wrote the story. So if you want to see more about them, they're on Instagram at Gideon the Rivian.
What you dug up was, right, that this is a Rivian employee who was transferred from the Michigan office to the California office.
Yes.
And decided to tow a Mustang across country and document that process.
So this is really cool. So apparently they own this Mustang, which is their basically a racing car. They use it for track events. So obviously they wanted to bring it with them. So they took their Rivian R1T pickup truck, all electric pickup. They actually bought a pretty nice trailer, which is this aluminum car hauler trailer, which actually I'm jealous of.
It's a beautiful trailer.
And then they took it from Michigan to LA, which is 2,700 miles approximately. This is give and take a few miles, right? And then they also used the app, several apps, for example, PlugShare, and also a Better Route Planner to locate their charging points along the way. And they were very precise with this. And I figured something out as far as how often they were charging.
All right, so let's talk about that. You've actually had a chance to communicate with this couple,
Yes.
At least with the wife. And, you know, as I think back to, 3 years ago now, we actually tried to tow with a Model X across country. And honestly, we gave up. And the reason we gave up was we had a very light trailer, which was, what was it,
Well,
like
2,000 pounds.
2,000 pounds, and we were going to go from Colorado all the way to Oregon. And we found out that basically what happened was we would have to drive about 100 miles before having to charge. So the Model X had a range of 300 miles, but towing cut it down by 2/3. And then because normally the way you cross country with an electric vehicle is you never actually go down to zero, but because towing uses so much energy, we got close to zero, so then we would have to spend like an hour charging.
Or more, yeah.
So it was like 2 hours driving, an hour charging, and it turned a 17-hour trip into like a 27-hour trip. And so in Wyoming, we tapped out of it. We got the Ram, the traditional Ram. At that time, we had a Rebel and towed the trailer with the Rebel.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the basics. So they had a Rivian, the pickup truck, the R1T.
Yep.
And how much weight were they towing?
So they actually published a weight scale ticket as well. So they drove the truck and the trailer and everything loaded, right? They had their car on it, they had their luggage, right? They had the two people, and it weighed altogether 14,260 pounds according to their weight slip. So I had to deduce the weight from there, right? The Rivian truck curb weight is listed on one of the stories at 7,148 pounds.
That's a heavy boy.
So the trailer was probably in between like around 6,500 pounds.
Okay.
So it's a sizable load because the trailer is nice. It's probably about 2,000 pounds. The car is probably about 3,500 pounds plus some tools, right? So 6,500 pounds is a very standard weight that could also be like a camper, a boat, something like this.
What is the range of the Rivian? What is the stated range of the truck?
So EPA rates it at about, 314 miles?
14, yeah, that's right, 314. I believe,
314. This is the EPA range.
Which is very close to that Tesla we had. I think that was 301 at the time. The
Yes.
Model X, yeah.
Yes. So now, of course, the interesting part of this is they're towing and they're going cross country. So there's two challenges, right? The range will go down with weight, right? And also, how fast can you charge? Those are the two issues I think you would have. So their first leg of the trip was from Detroit area to Missouri. So they went, almost near Chicago, right by Chicago, and then went down south to Missouri. And they mapped out 7 charge spots in about 700 miles.
Oh, there you go. So pretty
about
much
100.
the same thing we found, that you're getting about 100 miles of range per charge.
Yes.
Now, you did talk to them. Did they go all the way to zero, or what were they staying within? Because usually the manufacturers recommend that you don't go all the way down, or you don't charge all the way up. It's bad for the battery life.
Yeah, I did. We interacted via Instagram messaging, and she told me that they went between 80% charge on the battery to about 16%.
Okay.
She was very precise. So I'm not sure why 16% was the magic number.
Why not?
but it kind of makes sense, and I think they chose that range mostly because that range is a kind of a quick charge range, according to her.
Okay.
So what they were able to do, she didn't say exactly how long they stayed at each charger because it varied. According to them, they used Electrify America.
Yeah.
My headline, I was trying to be cheeky, and I said that they stopped at every Walmart.
Which is where Electrify America stations are at.
Yes,
they have a
most of
partnership.
them.
Most of them, yeah. I've been to a lot of those, Andre. As you know, we've towed across country in a number of electric vehicles.
And also the Taycan, the Porsche.
We drove a Taycan from LA to here. We
Yeah.
drove a Mini SE, which was interesting, from Albuquerque to here, electrically stopping at every Walmart along the way.
So they did a similar thing. They stopped at a lot of Walmarts. The other thing that happened at some of these chargers is that a lot of these chargers are not meant for towing, right? So you pull into one, but it's just a short parking spot, right?
Yeah,
So your trailer is hanging out.
I felt bad because when we were towing with the Tesla, we actually blocked. So the problem is they're in a line, right?
Yeah.
And then if you want to charge, you've got two choices. You can pull in straight, which is what you would do with a normal vehicle, but then you've got this big tow thing behind you, so it's sticking way out. Or what we did in Cheyenne, which was actually worse, but there was no one there. We pulled in and basically blocked all the chargers. So in their pictures, is that what happened? They pulled in straight?
Similar thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, the charger port on the Rivian is in the front.
Yeah.
In the Tesla, it's usually in the back,
yeah.
right? So actually, it's a little bit easier in the Rivian because you don't have to turn around, you don't have to back up, et cetera, et cetera. So most of the time, there were either in the places where nobody else was. Sometimes they're showing their images, blocking maybe one of the alleyways. So it was a challenge. Sometimes they unhooked. They actually left the trailer in the parking lot and then pulled up and charged.
Wow, that's a pain. Yeah.
Yes, so it's not ideal. So the charging infrastructure and network needs to be updated in order to support towing.
So Electrify America has two kinds of chargers. They have the 150 kilowatt chargers, and then they have the up to 350 kilowatt. So we found that even towing in the Taycan, which was ironic, that has one of the fastest charging rates available. So I think charges up to 270 or 280 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we found that only one of the Electrify America stations, when we did it, actually got us to like 150. The rest actually stayed below 100. So do we know how these guys were able to do? How much energy they were able to suck up?
So they used primarily Electrify America
Yeah.
stops, as far as my research showed. But they did some others, and they reported that I think one station they pulled in was only giving them 30 kilowatts.
Wow.
Which is slow. I mean, if you're capable of a 150
Or 270.
you're only receiving 30.
Yeah.
So they said they aborted that charging, went somewhere else, found a station with 80 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts.
Okay.
So it wasn't super easy. They were looking for chargers that would support their fast charging need.
So when they got down to Missouri, which way did they go then?
So then they went more south, and then they crossed over to Dallas. So they took the southern route, basically. From Dallas, they went to, I believe, El Paso, then Phoenix, and then LA. And that second leg, I'm showing one of the images. Obviously, they probably had to stay at hotels as well along the way, because that's 2,000 miles. And they have mapped out 20 stops for charging.
So basically every 100 miles they stopped.
Approximately,
And I
yes.
think, did she tell you how long those stops took?
No, that's one information I did not get.
Okay.
But let's say if they're at 80 kilowatts, so after an hour you're receiving about 80 kilowatt hours, right?
Right.
Which is probably the meat of that battery.
Yeah.
That's where the meat, because this Rivian truck has potentially up to, this version of it, up to 135 kilowatt hour battery. So if you're between 16% and 80, that's probably 80 kilowatt hours of capacity. So maybe after an hour, of charge, they could probably get going.
I think it'd be a safe assumption if you're being kind and conservative, you could say that that charging took them probably at least a half hour each stop. I think realistically you're looking at more like an hour. So 20 stops, you're looking at 20 hours or 10 hours worth of charging on that trip. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's probably more than just stopping at a truck stop, right? And actually
Yeah.
filling up for 15 minutes and getting a coffee. So it takes a significant amount of time.
Now, did she ever tell you, how long the entire trip took?
No, I didn't get a sense for that, but it was in November.
Okay.
So they did this in November. So I don't know exactly how long this trip took. She was actually kind enough to actually answer my questions on Instagram. So thank you very much.
Well, we'd like to get you, and Andre has asked, on our podcast and actually do a full interview. And I'd love to get kind of the deep details about how long it took, how many arguments they had along the way. If it was me and my wife, all right, maybe I won't ask about that. We'll never get him on the podcast if I ask about that. But we'd love to have you guys on the podcast. I think
it would be fun.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
We've asked that question, and if the PR team is good with it, we'd love to kind of feature it because, as far as I know, this is the first time somebody's actually towed across country with a Rivian.
And they used the Gen Y hitch.
Oh, get out! Really, one of our favorites.
Yeah, our favorite height adjustable hitch. So they're very serious, very precise. Everything, and I'm jealous. I want this trailer, really.
The questions that I'm really curious about, first of all, is how does the truck perform when it's towing? So how does it handle the load? How does it affect regenerative braking? That's another question I'd love to know. You got 6,000 pounds pushing against the vehicle. Are you actually putting more power into it? Can you figure that out? And of course, what's it like to let's say they're let's be real. They're driving 100 miles. So basically, you're driving. If you're on an American interstate, you're driving. Let's say the speed limit, which is 75. So you're going an hour and a half, maybe. And then realistically, you're
stopping for like an hour.
For
almost.
an hour, yeah. What's that like? Is the question? I guess I'm trying to get at, Andre, is electric truck towing a thing, or is it something that still is kind of in its infancy, and we're going to have to wait for kind of the next generation of batteries before people will be willing to give up their gasoline-powered vehicles and turn to electric? Because the torque is there, certainly the horsepower is there, because this Rivian has 800 and some horsepower.
It's insane amount of power.
But the range is always going to be the same.
And also, like if this truck itself weighs about 7,100 pounds, like I was talking about, this is my hunch, and she didn't tell me this, of course, because we had limited communication.
Let's be real, that's heavier than a full-size truck.
That's almost a heavy-duty truck territory.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of gas-powered, like F250 or Chevy Silverado 2500 are in that weight class, which means it's a stable platform.
Yes.
Right? Because it's a heavy vehicle. It's relatively, it's not as long as an F-150.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because the Rivian...
It's a weird size.
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than a mid-size truck, but not quite as big as a full-size truck. So it kind of splits the difference between those two truck categories.
Because it's heavy, it's probably a stable platform because the trailer is a little bit less of a weight than the truck itself. So I would imagine that they had, pretty stable drive. But stopping and having unreliable charging infrastructure, by unreliable, I mean, not as fast as you would hope, right? That would be a challenge.
Yeah, because you don't know, Once you get into the electric car charging world, there's a bunch of different tricks
it's unpredictable.
that you learn about charging. Anyway, guys, there you have it. As far as we know, the very first tow with the Rivian across country. Let us know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to get your opinion. Do you think that you'd be willing to, drive an hour and a half and wait an hour, or is that something that you think is just a little too? You have to have a lot of time to do. What are the comments on your story, Andre? What have people been saying about that? Because you got like 150 comments.
Yeah, at least.
What's the feedback so far?
Yeah, so a lot of people are kind of echoing one of your comments, is that this couple had a lot of patience.
Patience of Job, I think, was one of the comments, if I'm right.
Yeah, there's a Toy Crusher comment from Toy Crusher saying that nose first, basically commenting about not being able to pull through this charger, right?
Yeah.
So there's a few comments there. So some people are saying that they couldn't probably handle driving 2,700 miles like this. I mean, and that's a fair comment.
Well, the good news we found out is that Walmart does have a fully stocked deli, and they have my favorite Lipton iced tea. So, I was a happy camper when we stopped at Walmart's.
But yeah, and this is kind of the early days of electric towing, right? So we're exploring this.
Guys, thanks for watching. Remember, if you want to keep up to date on all this, just download to your phone our little phone app, tfl-studios.com. And then if it's not a video and it's a story, you'll get it first. Or if it's a podcast, you'll also get it. All of the TFL content in one place. Thank you, Andre, for digging the story up. It's interesting, and hopefully Rivian has told us that they're going to lend us a vehicle. When did they say we're going to get one?
Mid-January.
Mid-January.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a ways.
And
in the journalism world, that's a long time.
It's a long time in journalism hours, but they're also offering it to us, with towing reviews, so we can do anything with it.
Oh, thank you guys. Yeah.
So thank you.
We'd love to take up the world's toughest towing test. It should do well.
Yeah. There you have it.